Christmas Eve, 1945, Fayetteville, West Virginia. The air was cold, biting at the skin, and the wind howled through the Appalachian Mountains. In a large two-story timber frame house, George and Jenny Sodder were settling in for the night. They had every reason to be happy. They were living the American dream. George was a successful businessman running a trucking company hauling coal and dirt. They had 10 children. 1 was away in the army, but 9 were home. The house was full of life, laughter, and the anticipation of Christmas morning. But as the lights went out in Fayetteville that night, something dark was moving in the shadows. This was not going to be a silent night. By sunrise, the Sodder home would be nothing but a pile of smoking ash. 5 of the children would be standing outside, shivering in the snow. The other 5 were gone, vanished. The authorities said it was a tragedy. They said the fire consumed them. But as the smoke cleared, the family noticed things that did not make sense. There were no bodies. There were no bones. There was no smell of burnt flesh, just silence. What happened that night in West Virginia remains one of the most disturbing mysteries in American history. Did 5 children really die in that fire? Or were they stolen, taken into the night while their house burned to cover the crime? This is the story of the Sodder children, and be warned, the deeper we look, the darker it gets. To understand this tragedy, we must look at the man at the center of it, George Sodder. He was an Italian immigrant, born Giorgio Soddu in Sardinia. He came to America when he was just 13. He was a man of strong character, but George had a mouth on him. He was fiercely opinionated. And in the Italian immigrant community of the 1940s, politics were dangerous. George despised Benito Mussolini. He was vocal about his hatred for the dictator, often getting into heated arguments with other Italians in the area who supported the fascist regime. These were not just polite disagreements, these were threats. Only 2 months before that Christmas, a stranger had come to the Sodder home looking for work. He walked around to the back of the house, pointed to the fuse boxes, and said, "This is going to cause a fire someday." George thought it was strange. He had just had the house rewired, and it was declared perfectly safe. Then came the insurance salesman. Another visitor who wasn't there to sell but to deliver a message. He got angry with George and shouted, "Your house is going to go up in smoke, and your children are going to be destroyed. You are going to be paid for the dirty remarks you have been making about Mussolini." The events of that night played out like a scripted nightmare. It was 12:30 in the morning. The phone rang. Jenny Sodder woke up and answered it. It was a woman's voice she didn't recognize, asking for a name she didn't know. In the background, there was weird laughter and clinking glasses. Jenny hung up, feeling uneasy. She noticed the lights were still on downstairs and the curtains were open. She turned them off and went back to bed. As she drifted off, she heard a loud bang on the roof, like a heavy object hitting the shingles, followed by a rolling noise. Half an hour later, she woke up to the smell of smoke. The office was on fire. George and Jenny screamed for the children. They escaped with the 4 youngest, but the staircase to the attic, where the other 5 slept, was a wall of flames. George tried everything. He ran to get his ladder, which was always kept against the house. It was gone. He tried to pull his coal trucks to the window to climb up. Neither truck would start. He tried to scoop water from the rain barrel. It was frozen solid. Everything, absolutely everything, went wrong at the exact same moment. The fire burned for roughly 45 minutes before the roof collapsed. The local coroner said the fire had been intense enough to cremate the bodies completely. They told the family to bury the past. But George couldn't. He worked with coal. He knew fire, and the physics didn't make sense. Even in a crematorium, at 2,000 degrees for 2 hours, bones remain. They do not turn to dust in 45 minutes of an open-air house fire. And then there were the lights. Witnesses saw the lights on in the house while the fire was burning. If it was an electrical fire caused by faulty wiring, the power would have cut out instantly. And later, the missing ladder was found thrown down an embankment away from the house. The trucks? Their wires had been cut, and the phone line wasn't burned through. It had been sliced cleanly at the top of the pole, 14 feet in the air. Someone had climbed up there to cut it. This was not an accident. This was a siege. Rumors swirled that the Sicilian Mafia had taken the children to punish George. In the old country, taking a man's children was the ultimate revenge. It wasn't about killing them. It was about erasing them. Witnesses came forward. A woman at a hotel claimed she saw the children a week later with 2 men and 2 women of Italian extraction. She said the men were hostile and wouldn't let her speak to the kids. George hired private investigators. One of them found that the local fire chief had buried a box in the rubble, claiming it contained a heart. When they dug it up, it was a fresh beef liver. Why would the fire chief plant fake evidence to convince the family the children were dead? Was he being threatened too? 20 years passed. In 1968, Jenny received a letter with no return address, postmarked from Kentucky. Inside was a photo of a young man who looked exactly like Louis Sodder would have looked as an adult. The back read, "Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, Elil Boys, a 90132. George sent a detective to Kentucky to find him. The detective took the money and vanished, never to be seen again. George died a year later. Jenny wore black until her death in 1989. The billboard they built on Route 19 stood for decades, a fading reminder of a Christmas that never ended. So ask yourself, did 5 children really go up in smoke without leaving a single bone behind? Or are they still out there, living lives under different names, unaware that their parents never stopped looking for them? This is the mystery of the Sodder Children. Thank you for watching. Sleep well.